The other report that we just want to touch on is the edge rush contract situation around the league. There's a report out there that the Steelers are expected to have a deal with TJ Watt by the start of the season. And between that and the fact that Trey Hendrickson, every time he shows up to OTAs here in Cincinnati, is voicing his displeasure with the organization and wanting to get paid. And we just saw Myles Garrett completely reset the defensive player market with $40 million per year for an edge rusher. The first time we've seen a defensive player really get up into, say, quarterback-ish type of money on really any position. We saw a receiver creep toward QB money for a bit. Now edge rushers doing it. So as far as APY goes, average per year, it's Myles Garrett at 40, Danielle Hunter is at 35.6. So there's a pretty big gap there. And currently, TJ Watt on his current deal per Over the Cap, our friends at Over the Cap, TJ Watt is at 28 million per year. So is he going to get up close to that 40 mark that Myles Garrett has?
Yeah, well, this is a fascinating dynamic in how teams handle these contracts because effectively Trey Hendrickson for the Bengals and TJ Watt from the Steelers are kind of in the same boat, right? They're both 30 years old, entering the last year of their contract, wanting a new deal, right? Pittsburgh seemingly seemed perfectly happy to make that happen. Obviously you're going to have the standard negotiation between player and team, but both sides seem to be keen on making that work. And the reports are they're going to have a deal done before the season, right? Meanwhile, the Bengals are at like an impasse with Trey Hendrickson where he wants his new deal. He wants presumably fair market value. And the Bengals are like, you're not worth anything like that. And we just gave a boatload of money to the offensive side. You're going to have to accept a lower amount of money and be happy about it, right? And that appears to be stalemate right now. And then obviously in Dallas, you've got Micah Parsons in a similar situation, except he's working on a contract previous, right? He's working on the first big money contract. But Dallas being Dallas lets this stuff drag out. And so just like Dak Prescott, the longer you wait, the more the price tag is going up, right? So the Steelers, if they get this deal done, Myles Garrett has kind of set the benchmark for what that money should look like. If it's anywhere near that contract number, the Trey Hendrickson deal gets more difficult to do because the price tag just went up and you already didn't want to pay him what he wants. And then both of these deals are going to push the Micah Parsons deal higher because he's younger than these guys and arguably better. So like the longer Dallas drags this out, the more they're going to end up exactly where they were with the Dak Prescott deal, which is right now, like Dak's contract is a quarterback outlier because they waited so long and had no leverage and ended up just having to pay him whatever he wanted. If they do the same thing with Micah Parsons, like that deal is going to end up being an outlier contract as well. And whatever about how many big money contracts you can take on as a team under their salary cap, like you can't take on many outlier contracts in that
Right.
world.
So just to add some more perspective here, I mentioned Myles Garrett's number one. His average per year is 40. There are three other edge rushers at 34 or higher. That's Danielle Hunter, Max Crosby, Nick Bosa. Then there's a drop-off, and there's a chunk of guys at the 28 mark. And then Hendrickson, just in his average per year, he's at 11th, right? So again, like the Bengals are probably like, hey, man, you're the 11th highest paid edge rusher per year in the NFL. That's pretty good. You might be a top 5 guy, but you're at 11th. It's not like we're killing you. But he's at 21 per year, right? When Myles Garrett's at 40. So we're talking about the top end of the market is really taking off. And then look, the other interesting factor is Garrett, Watt, and Hendrickson, they were all the same draft class. They were all 2017. So we're not talking about, they might have slightly different ages, but we're talking about they all came into the league at the same time. You mentioned Parsons. We're talking about his first contract. He probably will break the $40 million mark that Myles Garrett has. But you could make the argument that Trey Hendrickson, the way he produced last year with no other help on the offensive line, or on the defensive line, and he had a very TJ Watt type season. Like, when he won, it was a sack, and it was a crucial sack that meant something in big games. You could argue that Hendrickson needs to make 35 plus, or that he absolutely should be in that Max Crosby, Nick Bosa type of range. And that's a big increase for Trey Hendrickson. So yeah, there's a lot of dynamics at play this summer here for edge rushers.
Yeah, Hendrickson's, I think, actually a couple of months younger than TJ Watt is, but they're basically the same age, same draft class,
Yeah.
same experience. It is, I mean, Hendrickson's performance has been nuts. Like, the big difference between the two of them is one of them started off as a first round pick and one of them was a third round pick, and it did take him a little bit of time. Like, TJ Watt basically hit the ground running in the NFL and was an amazing player from the get-go. Hendrickson did take a while to become the player that he's become, but has become one of those dudes. Like, his PFF pass rushing grades for the first few years in New Orleans were in the 60s. He was fine. He was solid. He was playing, 300, 400 snaps. And then he became a full-time starter. And his final year in New Orleans, his grade jumped to 77. His pressure total jumped to 50. He had 14 total sacks this season, including that season. Um, then from that point on, like once he got to the Bengals, he's been a dominant force. Like his pass rushing grades went to 87, 88, 91, 90.4. And the pressure totals jumped to an average of what? That's for like an average of 80 over the last 4 years. And in
Yep.
three of those years, he's been pushing 20 sacks including the postseason run. So like he's put himself into that TJ Watt, Nick Bosa category in the last few years. It's difficult to find a way of saying that he isn't there. And the only way that you can keep him away from that kind of number contract wise is to make that argument, right? Is for Cincinnati to be arguing with him, you're not where they are. Like you are a step down from TJ Watt and Nick Bosa and those kinds of guys. You
Well,
don't deserve that kind of money. And I think at this point, it's difficult to make that case.
the other point that I would make, if I was Trey Hendrickson's agent working the other side of things,
All right, that's enough of that, Steve. Over 50% of the people listening to this are not subscribed right now. So click that button and then we can get back to whatever it is Steve's telling you about.
For years I've said, remember left tackle, right tackle, we've always viewed it through this lens of the offensive line or the left tackle is the premier spot. The NFL has morphed those much closer
Right.
together and gotten past that. But what is still true is it's probably true that the left tackle is the better pass blocker. So if you are the pass rusher opposite the left tackle, I think your job's a little bit more difficult, not drastically, but a little bit more. So when you talk about Watt almost always going up against the right tackle, he might have some more advantages. Even Aiden Hutchinson, other guys that we've cited here, slightly more advantages than Hendrickson and Garrett, who are exclusively going up against left tackles. I would actually use that if I'm
Sure.
Hendrickson's agent. I would use that in his favor that he's going up against what the NFL believes is the better pass protector and still probably is more often than not around the league.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a thing to argue and it's got some validity to it. If you're the Bengals though, this just put a clock on your negotiations because you want to get your deal with if you're going to get a deal done with Hendrickson, you have to get it done before the Watt contract comes down. There's no way that Watt deal helps your case. Like, it's only gonna make it more difficult. So, the clock is out there that they think they're gonna get this deal done before the season. You need to you need to kick your negotiations into overdrive because you need to get yours done before that comes down and ruins the framework that you're working on.
I mean, the other option is you just let him play out the last year of his deal, Hendrickson.
But I think he's making noise like he's not gonna play, and I think this
That's
is
but
one where
he
that might happen.
there's no leverage. There's no leverage to do that. There's just
You
none.
don't need leverage, you just need to ruin their like, Hassan Reddick did this, right? Hassan Reddick had no leverage and eventually was convinced to show up for the final few weeks of the season. Did that
He
help?
lost a lot of money. He lost a
Yeah,
lot of
but
money
the
doing
point is he
that.
did it. This is the po like, if you're the Bengals, it doesn't matter if you ultimately win and Trey Hendrickson, doesn't get his deal and you end up like it's a sour divorce and everybody leaves pissed off. If he's willing to do what Reddick did and, sit out or cause enough problems, your season's already screwed. Like, it doesn't help you that you win you quote unquote, you drew your line in the sand, you didn't balk, you didn't give him what he wanted, you quote unquote win the negotiation. Okay, but if you sat out 8 weeks and you had no pressure and you were like 4-9 by the time the important part of the season rolled around and you missed the playoffs, what good did that do anybody?
No, I get it. I look, Sam, there's a part of me that if I'm running the Bengals, I just give me all the superstars locked up, and then I know what I'm getting into over the next few years. I've got a big chunk of my cap in Burrow, the 2 receivers, and Trey Hendrickson. And then I know I have to draft well. I know I have to be shrewd with all the rest of my moves. Like there's a big part of me that says just sign them all, and then I know what my next 3 to 4 year window is going to look like and how I need to build. But you're still talking about a 31-year-old edge rusher in the last year of his deal, and I don't know if that's the best play with so much money locked up in Burrow, Higgins, and Chase.
But
And
then
I
you've
don't know if
already
that's the best way to do it.
then I think you've already screwed up because you should have gotten rid of him before before it got to here. You should have traded him
Well,
away before now.
I wouldn't want to do that because I think where you really screwed up is not okay. They tried to draft Shamar Stewart, and we'll see if he's certainly not going to be a like for like replacement for Hendrickson. But the only screw up to me is like the defensive line. The edge rush situation is so bad that you can't afford to trade him. Right, you don't have backup options. This isn't like the Eagles where you've loaded up on your D line. So if people walk, you're fine. We've already future proofed this. They tried. Myles Murphy hasn't come good. We don't know what's going to happen with Shamar Stewart. So they're just not in position to give up the guy that is the best pass rusher by a mile on this team.
But I don't think they have a realistic option to just say, you're under contract for 1 more year. We expect you to honor that contract because number one, I don't think he's going to do that. Number two, he's financially secure enough that he doesn't have to. Like, this is not a case where you're battling with the guy who's only got the rookie money. He's already been paid, right? He's already got the big money deal. Sure, he wants another big money deal, but he's financially secure enough that he can say, I'm not like, you can't screw me around that way. I'm not going to play for whatever it is, 18 million this year. Like, if you want me to do that, I'm just sitting out, right? And maybe I won't win either, but he has enough security that he can equally dig his heels in the sand and say, I'm going to screw everybody here just the way you are prepared to. So I think your 2 options were trade him away at the end of last year or pay him, right? And if you're going to pay him, you need to just you're not going to get him on the cheap. You just need to find what the number is and get it done. Like, there's no point haggling over a couple of million a year. Either way, it's the massive contract that you're being saddled with. Just get it done.
Maybe the trade ends up being the best way to go because as that market increases, like we're saying, I don't know if they can handle 35 million plus. And I'm being kind here. Like, he might need to be pushing the same 40 that Myles Garrett and presumably Micah Parsons are going to be looking, and TJ Watt are going to be looking at. So, yeah, that goes back to the longer you wait, the harder it is to get any sort of team friendly deal done.
I mean, I think the Myles Garrett number is probably an outlier at this point. Because remember, that came about because Myles Garrett demanded a trade. Like, he was like, all right, I'm out.
Really quick, by the way, that was DeAndre Hopkins a few years ago. He was making $5 million more per year than every other receiver for a couple years. Like, he remained an outlier for a couple years before people caught up to him. There's a chance that happens with Garrett. Maybe Parsons gets there, but they might be the 2 outliers in the 40s for a couple of years now before the rest of the market catches up.
That's what I'm saying. So I think the TJ Watt deal, let's say, because that's the one that's kind of going to influence these other ones if it gets done first. The Donnell Hunter's on 35, Crosby 35, Bosa 34. That's the area. If you're TJ Watt, you want to be looking at beating those deals. That's where I think he wants to be aiming for 36, 37, something like that. But then once that deal's done, then Parsons has all the leverage in the world. And I think Parsons is going to end up breaking the 40 deal if Dallas doesn't get it done the way Dak Prescott breached 60. So I think Hendrickson right now might be, you might be able to put him in that 35 area along with, Crosby, maybe beat the Nick Bosa deal. But as soon as the TJ Watt contract gets done, like, your framework gets junked because now his agent's going to be saying, well, okay, now the starting number is 37. So my point is, I just don't see a world where it's like we can accommodate 34, but we can't do 37. Like, just get it done. It's cheaper now. Get it done.
Would you sign Hendrickson, and now you'd have this massive chunk of your cap into Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and Hendrickson. Is that the right move for Cincinnati?
Yeah, again, I think the decision was trade him away or give him the new contract. If you don't want to trade him away, you got to sign him to the deal. And the sooner you sign him to the deal, the lower the number is.
Classic June discussion here. We'll see what happens contract-wise as far as these edge rushers go. Definitely some decisions to be made for Cincinnati. See what happens with TJ Watt. But the report is that he will be signing with the Steelers by the end of the summer or the start of the season.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.